Good evening, everyone, ministers, excellencies, colleagues, and friends. This is the 10th anniversary of the Budapest Balkans Forum. And already this evening, from some of the early founders of the program, I have heard that it began in a very small room with maybe 24 people 10 years ago. And now I'm proud to say that once again, we have a sellout crowd from all over the Western Balkans, all over all over Europe and abroad, and at pretty much every level of government and think tank sphere. So I have only a few comments to offer, recognizing that I'm standing in the way of a very compelling discussion on Central Europe and the Western Balkans in the new geopolitical era. So I want to make a few comments about why we are having this discussion here and why it is becoming so successful, more successful year after year. Over the last few years, and especially now, thanks not least to the efforts of many people in this room, Budapest has emerged as a core diplomatic link in the new world order. In the early days of the foreign policy of this government, Hungary's assertion that national interests would be paramount in the forthcoming era was greeted with scorn by many. We were told that only something called the rules-based international order, or only the liberal international order, was the legitimate and only path forward. From that point of view, patriotic governments that prioritized their national identity and sovereignty were the bad guys. And according to this view, national interest had always been the cause of discord in international affairs. But Hungary took a different view, that sacrificing national interests ultimately backfires, that national communities cannot be set aside forever, and that more and more, unfortunately, the liberal international order was not delivering the freedom, prosperity, and peace that it had promised. So with all the challenges that following this course entailed, Hungary chose the path of sovereignty and rejected the excessive demands of this so-called order, that it sacrifice its borders, that it give up its identity and traditions, and give up as well its national economic aspirations, and ultimately its values as well. Now, to be sure, in its heyday, the rules-based international order brought a lot of things that were good. It advised clear standards, better norms, and it paved the way for a hope in the future. These same promises were experienced throughout Central Europe and in the Western Balkans too. Yet it had some serious defects and challenges, the results of which we're trying to deal with today. The reason for this ultimately was that the bottom-up components of the system became underweighted. Nations, national interests, traditions, family policy, industrial policy, strategic foreign policy, all of these elements contained aspects that the rules-based international order sought to replace or downplay. The system developed a kind of certainty and even an arrogance. It began to turn its goals into standards to be used as punishment. And it began to make the dream seem very far off. It began to forbid questioning. And for all its benefits, it became a kind of club. And at the point that it became a club, it ceased to be a global order. Now, for reasons of geography, history, necessity, and perhaps most of all, leadership, Hungary has been at the forefront of a different view, that we can have lawful order, economic development, and maintain our national identity, and in fact, that the latter is the real ground of and security for the former. This has led to clashes with those who said that international law demands sacrificing everything that makes you who you are. But now, looking back, where are we? In October of last year, the US president announced that Budapest would be the eventual site of a meeting between himself and the Russian president at the end of the Russia-Ukraine war. Central Europe is now seen by the American administration, as well as by many of the other great powers, as a place of stability. And what Hungary always tells its global partners is that Hungary and Central Europe are not the only parts of this story, because this stability can be and should be a Western Balkans story as well. In recent years, the Hungarian approach on that issue set has achieved many concrete results, which we will discuss. New infrastructure is linking the region's energy supplies as well as its people and bringing capitals closer together. In the wake of those new links, closer economic cooperation has ensued and closer defense cooperation as well. During the Hungarian presidency of the Council of the EU, Hungary championed the most pro-enlargement presidency ever. And for the 16 years of the current Hungarian government, Hungary has been the strongest advocate that the Western Balkans enjoy as soon as possible the results that have been promised for so long. Hungary has begged that the rules not be politicized, that the goal of EU accession not be put off, and it has predicted, on the basis of its own experience, that returning to core national strengths can be the path to a peaceful and prosperous future. Against tendencies to politicize, and I'm going to make up a word, geopoliticize enlargement, it's a dangerous tendency of former academics to make up terms, so I had to do it. Against this tendency, Hungary has insisted on a merit-based enlargement process. Only through merit-based enlargement will we secure the stability and prosperity that have been promised for so long. The Western Balkans are not the periphery of the emerging order. They are central to building a Europe that is both deeply integrated as well as firmly rooted in strong national identities. And this partnership does stand on shared values: the strength of the family, demographic resilience in the face of migration pressures, and the determination to preserve national identity. With these as the foundation, we can achieve enlargement, deeper connectivity, and genuine security. And for that, one overarching imperative is needed, and there is no other way to put it. We must prioritize the Western Balkans. Accordingly, on this 10th anniversary of the beginning of the Budapest Balkans Forum, we will explore this imperative in depth through our ministerial roundtable this evening and another one tomorrow, as well as panels on strategic connectivity and family policies, as well as discussions on security alliances and peacekeeping. Finally, we at the Hungarian Institute of International Affairs are redoubling our commitment to providing a strong, stable, and suitable platform for exchange among statesmen, diplomats, and experts. So I'm pleased to announce that we have now formed the Balkán Intézet, or Balkans Institute, within the Institute to deepen the cooperation between Hungary and each and every country of the Western Balkans, particularly on the think tank level. So I invite you to meet our researchers and staff and to discuss the possibility of bringing our events to your country and to sending researchers to spend time with us. More and more, the diplomatic architecture of the new world order is running through Budapest. So with no further ado, I would like to hand it over to our distinguished panel. We're very happy to welcome Filip Ivanović, Deputy Prime Minister for Foreign and European Affairs of Montenegro. Péter Szijjártó, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Hungary. Coming back to our moderator, but first, Timcho Mucunski, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade of North Macedonia. Last but not least, Márton Ugrósdy, Deputy State Secretary of the Prime Minister's Office, will conduct the discussion.
Thank you very much, Gladden, for these thoughts. And before we jump to the discussion itself, I would also like to say a thank you to everybody who has been with us in the last 10 years, during which the Budapest Balkans Forum have evolved from that very small room in a very small hotel in downtown Budapest to one of the fanciest locations in town, as you can see. And it's a great pleasure for us that we can host even ministerial level roundtables these days, because we literally started out as a bunch of experts back in the days. And there have been many people who've been instrumental in making this event possible. First and foremost, the director of the institute at that time, Márton, and then Frank Spengler and Bauer Bence from the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, who have been helping with us a big deal in the initial days. Also my colleagues, Luca, Anna, Julci, Feri, and Cynthia along the way. And last but not least, Minister Szijjártó, who has been instrumental in the success of this event. We're very glad to have you back, as well as your fellow colleagues from the Western Balkans countries. So jumping right into the middle of the conversation, a couple of weeks back at the Munich Security Conference, the Americans once again talked about the importance of culture and values and the civilizational aspect of cooperation between countries. And as we do see the liberal international order coming to an end, I was just wondering that whether it's possible to base bilateral and multilateral relationships on these very shared values which are preeminent in the region. I dare to say that these are countries which approach international affairs from the point of view of common sense, national interest, and rationality that we do not really see everywhere. And especially against the backdrop of the last week, I think we really have to value if a country conducts its foreign policy through common sense. And because our host is Minister Szijjártó, I would like to start with you, that how common sense is driving Hungarian foreign policy on the Western Balkans.
Good evening to everyone. I also would like to wholeheartedly thank Filip and Timcho for accepting the invitation of ours and become the highlights of this forum. I really appreciate that you did come, because the whole forum is about your region, and it's always refreshing to hear the aspects of yours. I have to say that the European Union has entirely lost common sense. The policies of the European Union are super over-ideologized, and as an outcome of this phenomenon, European Union has lost its significance, both when it comes to global politics and global economy. If some in the room feels frustration because of this statement, I just would like to remind you that there are talks going on about to resolve a more than 4-year-long war of Europe, and the European Union has not been invited to the table. Of course, the Russians and the Ukrainians are sitting there as two parties to the war. The Americans are sitting there, the Arab countries are sitting there, but the European Union is not sitting there. So when it comes to losing our weight and significance in global politics, please remind yourself on that one. And when it comes to global economy, the thing is that Brussels basically has isolated European Union from the main players of global economy. Brussels has isolated European Union from the US. You might all remember the competition among the liberal leaders in Europe. Who can say more nasty thing on the American president, regardless if he's in office or if he's not? Just to please liberal media for the other day. Brussels has isolated European Union from Russia by this extremely successful, and quotation marks, sanction policy, which has hit the European economy much more than the Russian economy. And the European Union has been isolated from China as well, one of the economic powerhouses of the world, by considering it as a systematic rival to the European Union. Now, if you ask me what the hell it means, I have no idea. And the European Union has isolated itself from the emerging continents, from the continents of the future, namely Africa, Southeast Asia, by putting ideological preconditions ahead of trade or economic cooperation, like expectations towards other partners in Africa or Southeast Asia to align themselves with LGBT ideology and all this kind of stuff. So the thing is that now European Union needs some freshness, some dynamism, some energy, which would bring back some strength to the European Union. And I think that kind of strength, that kind of dynamism, that kind of freshness can only come from the Western Balkans. So I would like to say that now it's not an exaggeration to say that it is more in our interest that the Western Balkan countries join the European Union than their interest. So we have to be quick. And it is just a bad joke, a very bad joke, that some think that Ukraine joining the European Union would be better to the European Union than the Western Balkan countries joining the European Union. It's a bad joke that Ukraine would join the European Union earlier than these guys who have been in the waiting room for more than 15 years now.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, I would like to turn to you next. All the dynamism that the Minister was alluding to, all the ideas and all the freshness that emerges from the region, whether it comes to common sense, whether it comes to where one comes from in culture, tradition, history, and everything else, how does that drive foreign affairs? How does that drive a country's aspiration to join the European Union, and how you can have common sense in mind at the same time, because there are many, many economic and political and other pressures applied to both countries within and outside of the European Union to conform to ideas which might be already passé to some extent.
Thank you for the question. And first of all, of course, I would also like to join the gratitude for the invitation to be here. Gratitude to speak here tonight at the 10th Budapest Balkan Forum. I think it's extremely important that there is a forum that actually carries the name of Balkans. So this is not yet another forum on international or regional affairs, but it is a forum that is in a EU country that is dedicated to the Western Balkans, and we are very grateful for everything that you have been doing, and congratulations on the Jubilee and the fine work that you have done. I'm also very happy to hear that there will be a new research unit and institute dedicated to the Balkan at your institute, and Montenegro would be very happy to cooperate in any way possible with it. Going back to your question and going back also to Péter's answer, I would also like to start with a small joke. Please do not say anymore that it is more in the interest of the EU than us to become a member of the EU, because this is what our opposition keeps saying in Montenegro. Just in order to minimize the hard work that we are doing, that we have been doing. But going back to the serious things, it's very easy to answer the question of why Montenegro or why the whole region of the Western Balkans should join the European Union, because we are Europe. We are Europe by geography, we are Europe by history, we are Europe by civilizational values, we are Europe by all kinds of standards and criteria that you might have. So it has been a shame that we've been waiting to join the European Union for so long. And trust me, okay, I won't speak in the name of other countries, but trust me that in the name of Montenegro, I'm speaking in the name of Montenegro, we have been doing quite a lot of hard work for the past 13 years. And we are now, I hope, in the final phase of joining the European Union with our efforts to finish the negotiation process by the end of this year, but we are at less than 50% of closed chapters. So we rely on the support and help of friends within the European Union, including Hungary, that has been advocating quite strongly for our accession. And we had a very successful presidency of Hungary when we started actually closing a greater number of chapters. Of course, there are now different stories, so to say, around the European Union and around candidate countries. I must say that as a candidate country, we would like to have an open door policy of the European Union, which would mean that if you want to become a member of the EU, you can become a member of the EU, but once your homework, once your job is finished. And this is what we are doing. We are doing it being very aware that some of the things that we are doing are perhaps hard to do, but they are also in our national interest, because our main foreign policy goal is precisely becoming member of the European Union, and we have a very high support in the population for the European Union, so it goes from 70 to 80%, depending on the poll. And this is also common sense, because for us it's a common sense for a country that is in the Adriatic Sea, in the heart of the Mediterranean, in the heart of Western Balkans, meaning in the heart of Europe, to be part of the European Union. However, these are the metaphors that I'm using and that I hope that you can relate to. But in the past years, we have heard also different metaphors. I remember a few years ago when some EU officials were saying in a positive tone that, of course, we will keep an eye on Western Balkans because Western Balkans is our backyard. So Western Balkans is not the backyard. I mean, it's nice if you have a backyard, you can have a party or a barbecue, but this is not the real thing. So we are a real thing, essentially and substantially, and we just need a little political will from the side of the European Union, the EU member states, to become part of the European Union. And it is our strong belief that membership to the European Union is not going to be beneficial just for Montenegro or just for our countries. We believe that it's going to be beneficial for the European Union itself, because European Union will finally prove its credibility. It will prove that the enlargement is possible and is alive, because enlargement is the very essence of the Union. It's the best policy European Union has ever had. And if the Union is not united, then it's not a Union. And it will also, I think, be beneficial for also other candidate countries that can see the example and that can see the proof that if you do the work, you will get, so to say, compensated. But for us, the only and the final compensation is full-fledged membership to the European Union, and this is something that I would like to emphasize, because with all the hard work that we have been doing, we are not ready to accept anything less than the full membership to the European Union. So if everything goes well, as everything goes as we have planned, and if we get, we continue to get the support from the friends within the European Union, we are hoping, as I said, to end the process by 26, and hopefully within the next 2 years, we'll be together at the same table within the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. There are already so many things on the table: EU enlargement, common values, faith in common sense, merit-based process, transparency, clear goals, no goalposts which are not changing. How you can maintain your identity in such a complicated process when you have so many requirements to fill, so many chapters to close, yet you want to bring your uniqueness into the European Union, which should be something of a club of nations at the end of the day?
A very interesting question to ask the Macedonian foreign minister. So first of all, a huge thanks to the Hungarian Institute for International Affairs. This is my second time at one of their events, and also from an organization and substantial aspect, you do a lot of great work. It's a pleasure to be here. And a huge thank you to Péter. Although he won't accept it, he is our de facto host, and he is always a gracious host, so it's a pleasure to be in Budapest. I've learned a lot of things from Péter. One of my first visits as foreign minister was in Budapest, where he gave me a lot of very good advice that has stuck with me in almost the last 2 years, and I really value the way he approaches foreign policy. So I'll start like he started, in the sense, first of all, a quick comment on global affairs and then how they interplay into this issue, more from maybe a values-based perspective. What we are witnessing now is a huge paradigm shift in global affairs. And there are those on the left-leaning side of the ideological spectrum which are forcing a narrative where they're saying, you know, listen, international affairs is this dichotomy between values and pragmatism. And of course, they're the ones with the values. The pragmatism is negative, and you have to choose. I don't think that's the case. I think we have to be pragmatic enough so that we can implement our values, but the values that are core to the fundament of our national interest. And then we get to our specific case. First of all, I think Péter was very right in saying that we collectively need each other. It's not me to weigh which side needs more, but I don't mind the comment. But I would say that what our region needs is a hope that there's an understanding among the member states and in Brussels that the process of enlargement needs clarity, that it is not a process of charity, but it is a process that needs more and more clarity. And this is the basic fundament of our challenge as a nation. I dislike narratives of victimhood, but whenever I am asked this question about identity on the path towards membership, I have to remind people, a country that was, in all due respect, Filip, don't misunderstand me in the wrong way, but that became a candidate country before Montenegro was an independent country. A country that began its accession process together with Croatia, that was even before Croatia in the stabilization and association process in getting candidate status, still hasn't been allowed to open accession negotiations. Why? A country that in the last 30 years has changed flag, its own national flag, its constitution several times, and a few years ago was even asked to change its name, all for the promise of a European future. So when we are talking about losing your national identity on the path towards EU membership, we are experts in this process, sadly, regrettably. And this is what we're asking from the European Union. You know, we want full membership. There is no doubt that the overall political atmosphere in our country, irregardless of all of these concessions, is extremely pro-European. But the values which we want to implement are the true core European values, something which Secretary Rubio very rightly framed in Munich. You know, I think this was what he was talking about. What type of Europe do we want to join? We do not want to join a European Union that is asking us to give up our national identity, issues related to our language, to our national history. We do want to join a European Union that has its fundaments on the acquis communautaire, the highest standards in various different areas. So on that path, on these European values, we will do our utmost. We will reform our internal political, legal, and economic systems. We will do our best. But whenever we are asked to make a further national concession, we ask the question, why and what is next? And I think here, what the EU needs is a much higher level of clarity. Not in the area of reform, but in the area of additional concessions that are not part of the EU acquis, that many candidate states are being asked to make. So from this perspective, what I can tell you is, our society is, without a doubt, pro-European. Our government is focused very much on European reforms, but we are asking as a country, and I believe collectively as a region, for a clarity that sadly we have not received in the last few years.
Thank you. I very much liked your point. I very much liked your point about true and core European values, because this is something which is often forgotten in the accession process, which is being interpreted as a very technical negotiation dragging on for years, while nobody really asked that what this is for and what are the requirements and why we as the European Union are failing the candidates with keeping them in the waiting room for more than 20 years. Coming down from the level of values a little bit to pragmatic cooperation, which is obviously one of the most important topics these days, how do you think this kind of a common sense approach can facilitate economic cooperation between the countries of the Western Balkans and Hungary? And I would turn to Minister Szijjártó next with a very actual question, that what this means to energy security, for example, because obviously this is the most important topic driving not only the day, but the weeks ahead as well.
Well, the safety of energy supplies has always been a tremendously important topic, especially for landlocked countries. And the war in the Middle East has further, I might say, worsened the issue of security of energy supplies globally. Given the fact that third of the global maritime deliveries, global maritime oil deliveries have been stuck because of the closure of the Hormuz Strait. 20% of global maritime LNG deliveries have been stuck. And most of the Arab countries use this delivery route exclusively. So basically, there's now gonna be a big portion of oil missing from global market or getting there in a more challenging way compared to the one before or so far. So this will create a much more uncertain situation on the global energy market. In this regard, I have to tell you that we are extremely thankful for those countries in the Balkan area which have been a very reliable transit country or countries when it comes to the gas deliveries. So Turkey, Bulgaria and Serbia have been playing an extremely important role when it comes to the gas supply to this country, given the fact that 1.5, 2 years back, Ukraine has closed the delivery route of gas through itself. And now we are in a situation when Ukraine blocks the oil deliveries through itself. So this is not the first time Ukraine causes tremendous difficulties regarding the security of supply of energy regarding Hungary, but they have done so already when it comes to gas. And if we hadn't not been brave enough to build the Turkish Stream pipeline, we would be in a situation where we would never want to be, okay? So that's why I think that now, as the, let's say, the oil from the Arab world will have difficulties to enter the global market. Plus, the oil deliveries on the sea are facing tremendous difficulties because of the war in the Middle East. This would be high time that European Union lifts all the sanctions on Russian energy sources, given the fact that we need additional volumes of energy on the continent, because we all know, even those who have not been enrolled in the University of Economy, that once you have a lower volume of a product, price will increase. That's why we need additional volumes of energy now in Europe. And if we want big volumes of energy, then we need the Russian energy sources to be allowed to come back to the European market. We all know that, that the Russian, from Hungarian perspective, for us, the Russian energy sources are the cheapest ones. It has many reasons, but those are the cheapest ones. And now price matters and security of supply matters as well. And therefore, I do believe that now Europe should give up its ideologically motivated political approach. Repower EU is a shame, is a big shame. It doesn't make sense at all. It has nothing to do with what the commissioner says, competitiveness, security, whatever. It's just ideology. It is cutting energy sources from Europe. It is reducing the number of delivery routes. It is putting certain service providers in a monopolistic position against European Union member states. This is a shame that such a decision could take place in the European Union by a clear violation of the European regulations themselves. So therefore, I do believe that sanctions on energy should be lifted immediately, because it's not they just don't make sense. The fact that they're endanger the European security of supply and the European economy as such as well. Because I don't call it as a strategy that you buy energy sources 2, 3, 4 times higher price than any other parts of the world.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister. Coming back to the question of cooperation, and obviously energy is one of the most pressing issues of the day, but even if you look ahead, I was wondering that how you can construct a spirit of cooperation in the region, which then later will help us to resolve all the energy problems that we have at the moment, based on this shared idea of the world and how the system is changing around us.
Well, we are facing or feeling the same problem in Montenegro, but on a much smaller scale, because for us electricity is the main source and material for everything, not oil and gas, but we have also faced in the last couple of days some queues in the gas stations, people stocking on their reserves because of everything that's going on and the possibility of having shortages of this. So this is obviously an issue that will become and is becoming a global issue, and is going to be felt everywhere. Of course, in some countries more, in some countries less. But this is also one of the indicators of how important it is to connect and interconnect the region, and how important it is for all of us to cooperate, not just in terms of high political talks, but also in terms of infrastructure, in terms of economy, and so on and so on. For example, we have with Hungary very good cooperation in terms of economy, in terms of investments. Now we have 2 G2Gs, 2 government-to-government agreements. We are going to breathe some life in them and have a more concrete cooperation. Montenegro is, by the way, also this year chairing the Berlin process, which is a regional initiative. It will gather all countries from the Western Balkans to precisely discuss what are the ways to enhance the regional cooperation in many areas, including security, energy, and so on and so on. We need to work together on improving and enhancing our infrastructure. So we need better connections by road, by railway, of course, more frequent airline connections. These are the things that are still missing in our region. We are still not that well connected with each other. So, for example, Montenegro is building a highway. It's the biggest investment in the history of Montenegro, but it's a very difficult investment because of our geographical landscape. So there are a lot of hills, rivers, and so on. So it's not as easy to build a highway like through Vojvodina or through Hungary. But once it is built, it will go from the very south of Montenegro, from Bar, where we have a big port, to the north, where it should connect with the Serbian side of the highway, and then it will go through Central Europe. So this is going to be a very important project, not just for us in Montenegro, but for the whole region as well. The railway has the same route, but we need to modernize it. We need to make the trains be faster. And this is not just for, of course, passengers and for people, but it's also for goods, for trade. And the port of Bar is also an important place for energy supplies. So we need to sit together, all of us, and hopefully we will do this through the Berlin process as well, and need to see what are our priorities, what are the points that we need to do better, what are the areas where we need to improve things, and then, of course, work together on making. Of course, you cannot make an economy or a region completely self-sustainable, but we need to do more in order to become more sustainable, so to say. And this is where we also look forward and want to cooperate, not just among ourselves in the region, but also with Central Europe, because the region of Central Europe and, of course, Southeast Europe, those are our closest neighbors, and those are the countries that understand well our history, our geography, our landscape, our mentality, and so on and so on. And these are the closest countries to us. So these are basically the first countries that we want to cooperate with. And hopefully we will find ways to do that. Otherwise, if we do not stick together in some of the areas, every kind of global crisis or shortage is going to hit us hard, all of us. And this is something that we need to think about.
Thank you very much. Mr. Minister, roughly the same question, but North Macedonia is also a landlocked country, so your options are fewer and far between than the ones of Montenegro. But on the other hand, I can also not fail to notice that we just got closer to each other with the commissioning of the Hungarian section of the Belgrade-Budapest rail line, which shortens freight travel for now and passenger travel later on between our two countries. How we can utilize on this, and against the backdrop of all the global challenges, energy problems, and you name it, because there's so many crises around out there at the same time, how you can still maintain a spirit of cooperation with the neighboring countries to serve the national interests of your own country?
I'll try to be very quick because I see time is running out and I know you want to open questions to the audience. So first, just a very quick comment. I mean, I agree with most of what was said by both Péter and Filip. I mean, what we have right now is a very high level of geopolitical, not just political, but also security volatility. Péter mentioned it very well. It's causing disruptions to trade routes. It's causing disruptions to supply chains. This will and is inevitably leading to spikes of energy prices. Other issues such as inflation could follow. That means governments have to prepare with very quick measures as well as with midterm and long-term measures, but it also means collective action. And on this, I absolutely agree that we have no choice but to work together. When it comes to our long-term strategic approach as a country, and that interplays very much into our relationship with Hungary. Our focus right now is on two very important European corridors that intersect only in our country, and that is Corridor 8, and you mentioned it, Corridor 10. Very important from both a political security but also economic and trade perspective. On Corridor 10, we recently signed a G2G agreement with the United Kingdom. It is a process that is very much in the pipeline. On Corridor 8, we are probably the most advanced in the region, and we are pushing for both a very high level of investment in both road and rail infrastructure. When it comes to energy, we are in the process of building an interconnector with Greece, which would give us access to the LNG coming from the port of Alexandroupolis, and we hope to very quickly be starting work on a new interconnector with Serbia, which would also give a new route for access to the LNG coming from Alexandroupolis, not just to our direct neighbors to the North Serbia, but also other countries in Central and Eastern Europe. Very recently, we also reopened the oil pipeline with Greece as well, which is giving us other avenues of support in this process. Our relationship with Hungary, if I say is of crucial importance, it would be a very high level of understatement. So, Péter, I don't know how history will remember us. That is for historians to assess. But one thing that it will remember is that me and you were the ones that signed the strategic partnership between our two countries. So we have that at least from a few months ago. And that strategic partnership has opened many avenues for collaboration between the two countries. A lot of great investments across both sides that we as governments are facilitating, which aim to expand market access for Hungarian companies coming to our country, but also for Macedonian companies coming to Hungary. And we see a lot of mutual benefit for both sides through that process. We will continue to push very strongly on that bilateral agenda because we believe that it is a bilateral agenda, as you heard very well, and I've witnessed in practice, on the basis of principles and on the basis of a very high level of respect. And from that perspective, it has been a privilege to work with Prime Minister Orbán's government and with Péter. And I think in the last 2 years, on the basis of this relationship, we've managed to achieve a lot. We see Hungary as our strategic anchor in Europe. And I say this not just as a country, but I notice it as that the region sees it. Because it's not just rhetoric that is coming from Hungary on this path, it is a lot of actions. And you see these actions not just in political support when it comes to the European path, but you see it as direct investments, G2G support, tangible things that actually change lives of people and that give business an opportunity and an advantage. And these are the values that we as a government believe in, because the role as a government is to invest in processes that prosper a society, that put society in a situation where there is a willingness to develop one's families, to live on the basis of the values which we live. And in that sense, this is a relationship that has brought a lot of positive effect.
Thank you very much. I think now we got to the billion-dollar question, in a way that, on the one hand, we have two countries on stage which are pursuing deeper integration into the European Union, which means lots of economic constraints, just as we saw in the case of Hungary and oil imports and everything connected to that. But on the other hand, of course, you have some incentives to, like access to the single market, the four freedoms, and so on and so forth. So the question is, first to Minister Szijjártó, who's looking at this from the inside, and to the both gentlemen who are looking at this from the outside, that how you can protect your national interests in an integration where some of the rules are being put on your neck just in order to please some kind of a political audience that might not even exist. So how you can fight for your national interest in a place where there are some rules and regulations which prohibit you from doing certain things which are clearly in your national interest, and how you can find the right balance between the two. Basically, how you protect your national interests within the European Union.
Well, there has been this debate going on for a pretty long time now, how the future of the European Union from this perspective should look like. There used to be a strong debate even before the war has been launched in Ukraine about whether European Union should be something like a United States of Europe or an integration of sovereign and strong countries and nations. And we were always in the camp which was, supporting this sovereignistic type of approach against the federalistic one. And there was a kind of balance in this debate until Brexit. With the British leaving, the sovereignist camp has lost its leading force. So since Brexit, this debate is not as balanced as it used to be, and the federalistic approach is getting stronger and stronger. And this has been reflected in statements like the one before by former President Juncker, saying that the Commission is a political commission, which is clearly against the European Basic Treaty, because this is a technocrat body, which is the guardian of the treaties, and not a political body, because the political body is the European Council, where the prime ministers and presidents of the member states do sit together. Or this strong debate between sovereigns and federalists has been reflected in the issue of the veto right. Now, if you give up the veto right, that is clearly giving up part of your sovereignty. Because the guarantee that at the end of the day, no decisions can be made against your national interest in major issues is the veto right. And taking away the veto right is, number one, not democratic. And number two, it is clearly leading to a situation where the sovereign, where the national interest and the sovereignty of smaller member states can be violated easily. Because if the veto right is being taken away, it means that that's a totally new European Union, where either Brussels or one or two big member states make a decision, and then the smaller countries do have only a right to agree. Because it doesn't matter whether you agree or you disagree, if the veto right is being taken away. Now, the question is whether European Union is trying to circumvent veto right under the current circumstances or not. Yes, of course, they do. REPowerEU was one of this very shameful example, where they see that where the bureaucrats in Brussels or the big member states see that there is no chance for a unanimous vote, then they find out ways to openly violate the European regulations, and they know that the European court procedures last long, so whatever they decide, the situation cannot be repaired. But I think that the major issue is that we have to stick to the veto right, because otherwise national interest can not be represented in the proper manner.
Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, you have a different point of view on this question because you are still in a negotiation process with the European Union, and the bar seems quite high occasionally, and the height of the bar is being raised all the time. So once you reach some interim goals, there are new goals emerging over and over again. How can you draw the fine line between your national interest on the one hand, the issues on which you cannot compromise at all, and the requirements you're facing from the European Union, which might be changing, might be not, depends on the situation?
You're absolutely right that in the past 13 years, many times we felt that the not even joining, but getting closer to the membership to the EU is an ever-moving target. So you aim, you shoot, but then the target moves all of a sudden, and you need to recalibrate everything. And this is why it's also taking that long, because also the European acquis is not the same in 2013 and in 2026. Now it's much bigger, it's much more complex, and there are more and more reforms that you need to perform. But my government saw this opportunity. We were formed at the end of October in 2023, so it's a little bit more than 2 years. We saw an opportunity that there is a political will to revive, at least in declarations, the merit-based approach to the enlargement of the European Union, and we said we need to grasp this opportunity. So we worked very hard on different issues, but some of the issues were difficult for us. For example, for Montenegro as a tourist country, it's not very easy to be fully aligned with the visa regime of the European Union, because many countries from which citizens require visas for the European Union are a big part of tourists that come to Montenegro. So we have prolonged a little bit the adoption of the alignment with the visa regime. We still have a few countries that we need to erase from the visa-free regime list, but we are trying to compensate and find tourists from other markets. So this is just one very concrete and very palpable example for Montenegro. But on the other hand, for a country that is small in geography, small in population, and small in economy, and is geographically situated in a way that it is situated, we believe that there is more to gain than to lose with respecting these standards and criteria. However, what I must say, and what we have been saying for the past 2 years, we will do our best to fulfill all the standards and criteria for all the chapters, but let's not play the moving target anymore, because we believe now is the time. And we say it very openly, and Péter knows that. If it doesn't happen now, and if we who are the closest don't finish the process by the end of 26 with all the promises from the European Commission and EU member states, then what is the credibility of the very story of enlargement? How is it going to happen? We heard examples from North Macedonia, and we remember that because at some time when we were starting, people from Macedonia came as experts to Montenegro because they were already very well experienced in the EU enlargement process. But now we see the situation. If it happens also with Montenegro, that the attention shifts to some other candidate countries or to some other priorities, or if we see the energy and time being spent on some other discussions rather than focusing on the enlargement, then we are going to lose the momentum, lose the enthusiasm, and lose the credibility of the enlargement. And then all those voices that are present and that are saying whatever you do, you will never become member of the EU, will be right. And we want to prove them wrong. Now, on the other hand, of course, I understand that there are complex discussions within the European Union whether it should be a qualified majority vote, whether it should be abolishing veto rights for everything or only for some of the issues. So at the moment, this is not my cup of tea. So it will be up to Hungary and other EU member states to see whether they can come to a certain agreement. But from the candidate's perspective, I must repeat once again, while we do want to see more and more benefits as we come closer to the European Union, the full membership with full rights of all EU member states at the moment that they are as they are once we join. This is what we are aiming for, so nothing less but nothing more as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. What keeps me awake at night after all these events in the last 10 years is that, and sorry to put it bluntly, that we've been hearing the same arguments for the last 10 years and we haven't really moved ahead on any of those. There's frustration that whatever you do is not enough. There's also frustration internally that the EU institutions cannot be reformed when we're not moving ahead. At the same time, geopolitical changes are rendering the European Union much less competitive than it ever was. And we're stuck at ideological debates on, how green we should be, despite the fact that our economy is going down the drain at the same time. Mr. Minister, against that backdrop, coming back to something that you mentioned in your first intervention, that when it comes to what you have to give up for EU membership, you already did a lot. You changed the flag, you changed the name of the country, you changed the constitution, you took all these very painful steps just to be kept in the waiting room. So my very brutal and honest question would be that where you draw the red line, that how far you're willing to go when it comes to EU enlargement, and on which points you're not willing to compromise, and on which points you might be able to compromise in order to fulfill this dream of the country which has been around for decades.
Because Filip mentioned our expert, he knows I sometimes joke with him, be careful when Brussels gives you the front runner status. We've had it a few times. We come back to the issue of clarity. Let me give an example to this audience because always know your audience. And I know that this is an audience that knows and understands EU affairs very well. Myself and Filip, we represent two countries that are 100% aligned with the CFSP. My country, about a year and a half ago, was the first country in the region to sign a security and defense partnership with the European Union. More often than not, on multilateral affairs, we are asked even to go above and beyond the CFSP. And in most cases, because we know where our strategic path is, we say, okay, we want to be part of the system. We understand that it's a values-based system, that when all countries are aligned, we will respect it. But imagine to our surprise when a few months ago, we came in a position where we understood that the European Union had implemented tariffs on all of our countries, on our steel industries. Put in the same group all 6 Western Balkan countries, of which almost all of us are 100% aligner countries, in the same group of tariffs with Russia, Belarus, North Korea, and China. The same countries we are asked to put sanctions on through the CFSP. Imagine our surprise when new entry-exit rules prevent our truck drivers from the whole region from utilizing the European market. And for these drivers, as existential as they are to our economies, equally existential to the European economies as well, especially those from the closer parts of the region bordering the Western Balkan countries. And we are looking for solutions, but it seems that they're becoming more and more difficult to find. That doesn't mean we're going to remove ourselves from our values. That doesn't mean we'll stop being 100% CFSP aligned. But I think what is also fair is to call a spade a spade. It is not our role to tell the European Union how it plans on reforming itself. And that debate between supranationalism and intergovernmentalism has been there as long as I can remember. When we join the EU, we'll tell you what we think. Until then, it's our role to be an actor that is reliable. But the least that we expect from the member states and from EU institutions is to reciprocate that reliability. We do not want to be in a situation where we now bilaterally within the WTO framework have to discuss steel tariffs. For my country, the steel industry is between 4 to 6% of our GDP. And although I am a huge fan of the EU growth plan, I think it is one of the best facilities that we've seen in the last few years, which is bringing tangible effect. The economic benefits of it will be absolutely outweighed if these tariffs remain in place, if no solution is found for our transport sector and our truck drivers. And I say this in the midst of discussions that we're having with the European Union, and me and Péter last week we had a telephone call and we spoke about this issue, is to appeal to the decision makers in this room as well. Please urge your capitals that at this moment, in this era of in this moment of geopolitical volatility, as I mentioned previously, there are issues where the actions of EU institutions could severely harm the economies of these 6 countries, which are anchored in the same values, especially in the area of CFSP, that all of the member states share. My point is, clarity is what is missing. And I think that is the major theme that I want to send. Clarity is not missing from our side. We know that we belong in the European Union. Yes, there are challenges to which we need to find solutions to, but we expect that clarity to be fully reciprocated as a sign of respect to countries who have been in the waiting room for so long. And for my country, sadly, I don't even know if we're in the waiting room or outside of the waiting room waiting to come into the waiting room. This is the dilemma that we face from a substantial aspect. We will do our best when it comes to the issue of identity. For us, this is the biggest challenge, understandably so. We have said, for anything related to these types of issues, to be able to move forward on the expectations coming from Brussels, we need concrete clarity, and we need concrete clarity that will provide what is necessary for the entire region, and that is predictability on the path towards full membership.
I think credibility and predictability are one of the keywords of the conversation today. And I would like to finish up with the geopolitical level once again. And that has a lot to do with credibility and predictability as well. We have said so many times that this is the moment when Europe should get its act together and do enlargement and get the countries of the Western Balkans within the EU. Every year we come to this conclusion, and yet here we are, more than 20 years after Thessaloniki, when most of the negotiations have started. Do any of you think that this time we're going to make it? Or we're just going to keep talking about this and time will pass and people get frustrated and we might even lose popular support in the Western Balkan countries for EU enlargement, which is already happening, not in your countries, but in some of the countries in the region. Mr. Szijjártó, I would like to start with you.
Well, I don't want to cause a disillusion. I don't know how the verb is there, so I don't want to cause a disillusion here. But I just want to tell you that the majority of the EU member states do say and do announce different positions when they talk to you compared to when you are not there. Just to be aware of it. Majority of them, okay? Not some, majority of them. So when we are among ourselves, those who might tell you, or those who might say openly that they are so super pro-enlargement, they love you, Filip, we love you, Timcho, and we want you to be members of the European Union. When we are among each other, they rather speak about what kind of difficulties that would cause, what kind of obstacles are there on the way, why it's impossible, and so on and so forth. So, first, a huge shift should happen in the European Union. Hypocrisy should be replaced by honesty. And I wish that majority of the member states would say the same things behind closed doors and before an audience. And you know, I'm really fed up with this approach that when we discuss any important issue in the Foreign Affairs Council, colleagues come to me in the corridor that, Péter, you should be tough today. You should veto. You're gonna veto, right? You're gonna be tough. You're gonna say, yeah, okay, we are with you, okay? And then when we go into the room, and they say the same thing, 24 of them now, okay? But in the corridor, you know, they are great fighters, telling me that this is the right thing. So once we are over that, then the realistic hope will come for the Western Balkans to join the European Union.
Once again, we come back to the issue of clarity, I suppose. Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, looking at this from the other side, understanding your frustration for how long this can still go on.
As I said a few times, it takes too long. It looks like a dream that keeps escaping you all the time. But if European Union is really serious about the talk that we have been hearing for the past 3 or 4 years about a wake-up call, about EU wanting and needing to be a geopolitical player, to think more geostrategically, and so on, then where are you going to look at, if not in the very heart of the continent, which is the Western Balkans? It's the easiest thing ever for European Union to absorb Montenegro or to absorb other countries from Western Balkans. So this will be a test, and I said it will be a test not just for us who are doing the job of joining the European Union, but it will be also a test of the credibility and of the very essence of the European Union. Because I also said it a few times, without us, European Union is not European and is not union. So if it really wants to be a European Union, then it needs to absorb our countries, our region that has been not just geographically, but also historically there. And for us, of course, given the fact that geography is destiny, we will not join African Union. We want to join European Union. We cannot move from the geographical position in which we are, but if you insist on respecting European values, on CFSP, as Timcho mentioned, on the economy, connections, infrastructure, and so on, if you want to have a pro-European feeling in the population of these countries, then you cannot play with them, because the time of play is over. And we see it in Montenegro. We see it in very concrete examples. I told you that all the polls say that around from 70 to 80% of people in Montenegro are pro-European and want Montenegro to join European Union. But you know, these numbers are not the same every day. So, for example, when we were getting the so-called IBAR, the Interim Benchmark Assessment Report for chapters 23 and 24, as the first candidate country to ever receive such a report in June 24, the support of Montenegrin population for the EU was at the highest, because they realized that something was happening and that the EU was delivering and that we were delivering. But then when it happened under the Hungarian presidency, we were supposed to close 4 chapters. Everybody said 4 chapters. Then we closed 3 chapters. Then polls in January showed a few percentage of drop in the pro-European feeling. Then we closed another chapter, and then it went up again. So it means that whatever we think, that people perhaps don't really know what are the chapters about, what is the content of each chapter and so on, they monitor very closely what is going on, and they monitor very closely on what we are doing as the government, as the country, but they are also monitoring on what the European Union is doing. So if you fail expectations and if you fail promises, then of course the credibility is lost and the pro-European feeling of people is going down. And we saw that in some of the countries where some of the promises were not fulfilled. So what I think here, what I think now is that the European Union really needs to show credibility. It needs to, as Timcho said, reciprocate all the hard work that we are doing, and it needs to prove this idea that they are really thinking in a geostrategic way, and it needs a success story. So for my part, of course, as the government official of Montenegro, I think Montenegro is that success story, and we will do everything in our power to fulfill this both obligation but also privilege to be the success story of the European Union. But of course, we need reciprocation from the other side as well.
Mr. Foreign Minister, I would like to close with a thought on the most quote-unquote problematic part of democracy, which is the people. And the Deputy Prime Minister has been alluding to the fact that people are being frustrated, that they cannot drive trucks in the EU. They have to fill in the entry and exit forms when they're trying to enter Schengen and so on and so forth. What can a government do outside of high politics to keep the enthusiasm going? And whether you think you can utilize on this momentum that we might have at the moment to finally convince them that this is worth all the effort?
So in this job, you learn there's usually between 5 and 10 phrases that are so commonly used, you start getting frustrated by them. Don't misunderstand me, but momentum is one of them. Window of opportunity is the second. But there's a really trendy one right now. It's the term resilience. And that came to my mind. I believe in differentiating between two phenomenons, especially in our region. And Filip touched on this. I'll try not to be theoretical, although I'm a university professor, so I'm fighting myself at this moment. One is Euroscepticism. The second, which I think is very relevant to our region, is Euro-pessimism. Why I bring resilience into this? My country is the example of the most resilient society to double standards by the European Union. We go back to change of flag, change of constitution, change of name. We've managed to remain over 70% pro-European. How we've managed to remain so resilient, and I believe in the European path, very firmly, very authentically, and very innately. How we've managed to do this, it is an issue for social studies. But the problem for me is the following. I do not fear that our people will become Eurosceptic. It is impossible. If you look at our national history, the way our identity was built, we are a pro-Euro-Atlantic nation, and we will always remain one. That's why I don't fear Euroscepticism rising. What I fear is a rise of Euro-pessimism. And you see that in the public opinion polls. A society that is very pro-European, and if you read only the titles, over 70% of society is pro-EU. That's true. But look at the second question. What percentage of citizens believe that the EU will let us in? And there you see a huge drop. Society is very pro-EU, but it is not confident that the EU will open its path. But I want to end, at least my input in this discussion, on a positive note. I believe that it is in the basic cognitive function of every human, even when they're in the darkest tunnel, to look for that small glimmer of light. I believe that's how we're built as humans. And I also believe that Europe has an opportunity not just to provide a glimmer, but as Péter said, to bring the sun into the tunnel for us. But there needs to be a strategic vision for this. And that is what we are trying to appeal to you today. That is why we come to these panel discussions, where apart from great people from the think tank community, I know that there are ambassadors of the member states present here today. We discuss very openly to tell you we are committed, and we ask that you reciprocate that commitment towards us, because I believe that is what European values are about. They are about providing clarity for the future. There is always that risk that whenever a vacuum opens up, somebody else will try to fill it. We have remained, per that favorite term, resilient to somebody else filling this vacuum. But please help us in this resilience and provide us with a clear path that is predictable, because there is no doubt that the countries represented here today have a very firm conviction for a European future.
Thank you very much. And on that positive note, we have to conclude the conversation today. I would like to thank all the three gentlemen joining me tonight. Thank you very much. I think we made a big progress. And on that positive note, hopefully the ambassadors of the member states can convey the message back to their capitals as well. And we hope that they're going to be listened to. Please remain seated as the ministers are leaving the stage. And I will keep you updated with some housekeeping rules in the meantime. But once again, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. It was a pleasure to have you here today. While the minister is on the way out and I'm trying to adjust the microphones as I usually try to, let me remind you of some of the schedule for tomorrow. The registration starts at 8:30, so if you don't have your badge or if you don't have your name on your badge, please make sure you come on time. Registration lasts until 9:45. And after that, at 9:50, we're going to start with opening remarks, both from Ákos Mernyei, who's managing the project on the side of the Hungarian Institute of International Affairs, and John Bloomford, who's the special envoy of the Prime Minister of Hungary for the Western Balkans. And then we'll go at 10 to the keynote speech by Minister János Bokka, Minister of European Affairs of Hungary, and then we're going to proceed with the rest of the program. Thank you very much for coming today. I would also like to thank both Gladden and Ákos for carrying the torch for us. I started with reminiscing of the first 10 years, but obviously there should be more than 10 years when it comes to this conference, and they are the ones who are keeping the spirit alive. And it's so great to see so many familiar places in the audience. Welcome back to Budapest, and please enjoy the upcoming days, because I do believe that this is going to be a great opportunity for all of us to vent our frustrations on the one hand, but also look at that slimmer of light that Minister Mucunski was referring to at the very end of his remarks. Thank you very much. The session for today is adjourned.